December the 15th, 2016. Vladimir Putin does have a personal dislike for both of the Clintons. Obviously, the one that's said on TV right now about her comment in 2011 has to do with a lot of it, obviously, because he had information, it appears he had information that showed him that there was a lot of corruption and that she was involved in it. And 2011, she just had the nerve to come out and say that there was a problem with the Russian elections. So there is reason to believe that he might have, if he had access to this information, that he might have found it irresistible to trickle it out during an election. Having said that, I'd also like to point out something that's not being mentioned in the media, and that's 1998. There was a war during the time when Yugoslavia broke up, and towards the ending of that breakup, Serbia and Kosovo were still together, and there was a lot of bad things going on. Slobodan Milosevic, could be wrong on that name. He was obviously a kind of like Assad, and in Syria. And at the time, Boris Yeltsin, who was the was with the Soviet Union and talking really good with the West, and there was détente at that point where it looked like Russia and the United States would work together. The United Nations was working well, and Boris Yeltsin was consistently registering his concern that that the West being involved in the war with Serbia and Kosovo would have been a bad idea, would have been almost impossible for him to defend with the citizens of Russia. The reasons for that is because Russia is much... Russia sees itself as the Third Rome. When Byzantium fell and the Ottomans, who are now the Turks, took over Constantinople, Russia claimed that they were the inheritors of the old Rome. And having done that, they've always felt a close attachment to what goes on in the Balkans. Also, you have to consider that Serbia is a Slavic nation, and Russia also is a Slavic nation, and they do tend to look at each other as hereditary allies. Okay, they've always been very close. They've always identified. So Russia would take offense. Plus, the fact that Russia was right next to the Soviet Union was a bit of a problem. Okay, now you have Bill Clinton, who, after being advised by Boris Yeltsin that this would be a bad thing for Russia, he decides to go ahead and involve himself. But he does it in a backward way. He decides to use NATO as a way to remove some of the danger of him getting involved in it. The problem with that is that NATO was originally founded as a way of guaranteeing the United States would come and defend the West if Russia invaded. So Russia already doesn't understand why NATO is around, and then we end up using NATO as an umbrella to do this war in Kosovo. And Russia was, obviously, the citizens were not happy about that. And there was even more, like I said, NATO was a concern. The fact that NATO was now, like, basically setting themselves up on the border in an area that the Soviet Union pretty much considers its backyard, obviously was a concern. And they still wonder why it's still around, because the Warsaw Pact broke up. There's a lot of things that were going on and are still going on. Boris Yeltsin, a little while after that, picked Vladimir Putin. Why? We don't really know for sure, but he picked him. He was an ex-KGB agent, and we picked him, or they picked him. And shortly after that, Boris Yeltsin resigned, and then we got Vladimir Putin into office, and he didn't start off being really, really horrible. In fact, I don't think he really got out of hand until towards the end of toward the end of the George W. Bush administration, when we got involved in Iraq, so we can go there later. So anyway, there is reason to believe that he would have found it really delicious to embarrass the Clintons in this way. I don't believe that it was considered as stopping them as much as it was just kind of poking them in the eye and saying, see, you're not as perfect as everybody else. So anyway, that would be my take on it. We basically, by going into Kosovo, we won that war, but we lost Russia. And we did it back in 1998. And we are now beginning to see some of the results of those unwise foreign policy decisions at that time. And it was because we were under the assumption that Russia was never going to be a danger to us anymore. We did not think long term. We didn't consider the past history of the region. We just decided we needed to get involved. And, it was a civil war, basically. We should not have been involved in a civil war. We should never get involved in a civil war. It's just plain crazy to do that. They have every reason to be very passionate about it, and we're going in there to try to make peace. So this has got, it makes perfect sense if you think about it. Anyway, that's all I have to say about it. Hopefully some out there will agree with me. Thank you. Bye-bye.